Hello, my name is Michelle Bowers, and today I'd like to talk to you about pursuing family genealogy through NARA with a focus on immigration records. We'll start with a little bit of background on NARA, which is the National Archives and Record Administration. It was officially established by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1934, but its collection of records dates back to 1775. NARA serves as a repository for all federal records that are considered to have lasting value, which is generally about 1 to 3% of all federal records created. If that doesn't seem like very much, it's worth thinking about what those numbers add up to over time. Based on the latest numbers, NARA has over 10 billion pages of just textual records alone. On top of that, you've got 12 million maps, charts, and drawings, 49 million photographs, 300,000 reels of motion picture film, 400,000 video and sound recordings, and 133 terabytes of electronic data. The coolest thing about all that is that it's freely available to you if you're willing to put in a little time and effort into your search. NARA's huge wealth of information can be intimidating, especially since so much of it is not online and might require a trip to one of the archives buildings in order to do justice to your search. But even if you're only in the beginning stages of researching your history, NARA's online resources can help point you in new directions. Let's say you're interested in finding out about your great-great-great-great-grandmother who emigrated from Ireland in the 1850s, and you just found out that NARA holds immigration records. You want to search NARA's online records to find out as much as possible about your ancestor, so that you have the option of eventually doing more in-depth research at the archives. Before even getting on the internet, you can start by writing down and reviewing what you already know about this ancestor and checking the details with any relatives who might know more. In addition to her name, you'll want to think about where she came from and where she arrived, as specifically as possible. Any dates you can come up with are also a huge help, even if they're not exact. If you don't know her birthday, do you have an idea of when she arrived or even how old she might have been at the time? Take some time to brainstorm. The more details you can come up with before searching, the easier it'll be. Ready to start searching? The first thing you'll want to do is visit NARA's homepage of resources for genealogists, which can be found at www.archives.gov/research/genealogy/index. Under Browse Popular Topics, click the link for Immigration. Click or scroll down to Where Can I Find Immigration Records? For online searching, lists of passengers are arranged by port of entry into North America, and in some cases also by the date they entered that port. Without this information, you may be more successful doing an in-person search at one of the archives facilities, where you can structure your search differently and benefit from staff guidance. But at this point, if you know the point of immigration or if you have a fairly good guess, click Microform Available. Then just pick that port of arrival from the list, which is arranged alphabetically by the name of the town or port. Here's where your search strategy will vary depending on the details of where and when your ancestor arrived. If you're lucky enough to be researching an ancestor who arrived through a major port, such as New York City's Ellis Island, you have a few more options for online searching before making the decision to order microform copies or to visit an archives building. Let's take a look at what's available for Ellis Island, which is listed here under New York, New York. It's fairly common for some of the ports to have multiple date ranges, but at this point you may be wondering why New York's two date ranges overlap each other. This is because Ellis Island is one of a handful of ports from which immigration records have been digitized by nonprofit sources besides the federal government, in this case ellisisland.org. It's important to make this distinction, and to realize that NARA does occasionally provide access to outside resources and indexes. These outside resources can be useful in learning more or approaching your search from a different angle, but it can be a very different experience from searching in NARA. Just for comparison's sake, let's take a little detour and see what information this site might offer. Click on the second date range, 1892 to 1924, which will take you outside NARA and into ellis.island.org. It's easy to be distracted by all the ads, but the actual search box can be found at the top left of the page. It gives you the option to search by first name, last name, gender, and approximate year of birth, which allows you to search up to 7 years before or after the year you select. Let's say you know your ancestor's name but not her birthday, so you leave that blank for right now. Then click Start Search to view your results. Unfortunately, out of the search's 36 results, only one includes an Agnes Burke who arrived prior to 1900, and since you know your ancestor arrived around 1850 at roughly the age of 20, you know this can't be the right one. However, the search has turned up 36 other Agnes Burkes that you know aren't the person you're looking for, which can be useful to keep track of later on in your search so that you don't end up chasing the wrong person. Another thing to consider is the possibility of the name being spelled differently, something you'll want to keep in mind whether you're searching NARA or any other genealogical source. Let's go back to searching NARA records only and see what's available. If we know the arrival date we're looking for is around 1850, we can search the roll lists and descriptions included under 1820 to 1897. Again, your search strategy here will vary depending on exactly what you know about your ancestor. There's 3 different indexes listed under New York, in the state range, any of which could potentially be what you're looking for. Let's pull up each index in a separate window and take a look. Definitely a different set of findings than what we were able to pull up through ellisisland.org, and to be honest, probably pretty different from what we were hoping to find. 2 out of the 3 lists focus on the arrival dates of the ships, which can be really useful if you already know the vessel name and the date of arrival. Also, they each cover about 100 years of history, which can be a little overwhelming to sift through. Index M261 is organized by last name, which makes it seem a little more approachable for someone in the early stages of their research. The layout seems simple, until you consider again that there may be possible spellings of your ancestor's last name. So while your first instinct might be to latch on to Reel 12, which would contain any ancestors under Burke spelled B-U-R-K-E, you might also need to consider Reel number 8, in case this ancestor's name could have been recorded as B-O-U-R-K-E, or Reel 4 in case it was recorded as B-E-R-G-H. But if you're at the point where you're confident of your ancestor's arrival date, location, name, and spelling, then this index would point you towards your next steps of either visiting the physical archives that holds that roll, or else ordering a copy of the roll online. Either way you choose, NARA does have pages available to help you with your next step. But let's say you're not quite ready to make that trip to the archives, or to spend money on a microfilm copy that you're still not 100% sure about. Is that really all the information you can find about your ancestor from NARA's online records? This is where it can be helpful to think a little outside the box, and to consider NARA's purpose as a federal archives. Its mission is to document the nation's history as closely and thoroughly as possible. With that in mind, is there anything significant about the circumstances of your ancestor's arrival that might be significant to the country as a whole? Was it caused by some major world event, such as a war or economic crisis? You know your ancestor emigrated during the Irish potato famine, like so many other Irish citizens during the mid-1800s. Since this wave of emigration had a strong impact on American culture, it's possible that NARA would have a special collection devoted to this time period. Again, the sheer amount of information held by NARA makes it impossible to digitize everything, but NARA does maintain a series of collections devoted to organizing and preserving nationally significant records, which can be found through access to archival databases at aad.archives.gov/aad. This portion of the site is divided into popular categories. In this case, we could try either the general category of genealogy personal history, or the more specific option of passenger lists. Clicking either category brings us to the list of 25 genealogy series, with the second one looking promising. At this point, you have the option of searching either of the sub-collections in this series. Since we currently have a lot more definite information on the passenger than we do on the ship, the first collection seems more promising. Some of the fields are a little too specific for the limited information we have right now, but we can start with a general search of last name, first name, and a rough arrival date. In this case, a general search works just fine. Out of our 2 results, it's clear to see that only one Agnes meets our expectations for age and country of origin. We can click on View Record to bring up the file and view any extra information. The blank fields on the record are a little disappointing, as they give a glimpse at the type of information that could have been recorded but wasn't, such as literacy code and town of last residence. However, we do get hugely valuable pieces of information: port of embarkation, manifest ID number, and an exact arrival date. These 3 pieces of information have the potential to be a huge help in navigating some of the other collections we saw earlier, such as the lists indexed by vessel arrival date. Now that you have a few more crucial pieces of information about your ancestor, you have several possible directions for further research. If you feel confident enough in what you have seen to order microfilm copies, you can do that from several different access points on the site, including archives.gov/research/order. Alternatively, you could use your new information on your ancestor to search non-government sites such as Ancestry.com, either for a fee or maybe through a public library near you. Ultimately, though, your best chance of accessing the wealth of NARA's resources will still come from visiting one of their facilities and exploring all that NARA has to offer. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to share any questions or comments in the discussion board. Thanks so much!